Hello, welcome in or welcome back to my channel. My name is Deb from DG Reads, and I'm here to head for the islands. In real life, I'm actually planning on taking off for an island vacation very, very soon. I am heading off to Zanzibar, and this is a trip with Trova Trips and Becca at Becca in the Books, and I couldn't be more excited to finally get there, be relaxing, and having a fabulous time with fabulous people. And in the lead up to this, I figured what better to kind of prepare myself than to read a bunch of books set on islands. I found a ton of them on my TBR. I'm not going to get to all of them in the space of this vlog, but I'm excited to kind of dip my toe into a little bit of island living ahead of time. I'm not going to go into great detail as to what my TBR for this is going to be because it's going to kind of come up as it comes up. I have a couple of island related books on my official July TBR, but several others I could wind up throwing in here. So I'm going to try to get to as many as possible, hopefully find some big wins, and we shall see how it goes. I have launched my journey into island books by picking up my first, which is You Are Fatally Invited by Andy Pliego. This is a gifted copy I received from Bantam Books, and I also picked up the audiobook from my library because it does have a full cast audio, which I always do appreciate. The premise of this book is that this group of writers are invited by a famous author to come to his private island home. And they're going to be there for a writing retreat, but also some murder mystery dinners and things like that. Sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds like a great opportunity, but things aren't always what they seem. When they arrive at the island, it's not the famous author who is there to greet them, but an assistant. And that's not exactly what they expected, but they roll with it. Famous people have things to do, but the famous author doesn't show up. And even worse, one of the guests goes missing. And at first they're not sure, is this part of the games? Is this something serious? But eventually they find a dead body, and suddenly they're in the middle of a real murder mystery. The assistant Mila is there. She is the one who has organized this entire event, all the twists and turns to this fun outing. Obviously, this is not what she planned, but also she did plan something a little bit sinister that we don't really know what's going on. But from the very beginning, we know she, in her inner monologue, is talking about one of the people attending, or at least that's what it seems, and saying that she's planning some sort of like revenge or something on them. Like, you're in danger, something's going to happen to you. And that has me very intrigued. But does that play into what is going wrong on the island, or is that something different? I don't know. I'm about 40% of the way into it currently and got through the first 40%, obviously, very quickly. So I'm eager to continue on with this. I decided to stop a little bit earlier on because with the mystery, I don't want to get too far in and potentially accidentally give any spoilers. So I'm going to sit down and do a little bit more reading to continue on with this, and I'll let you know my thoughts at the end. I finished my first island book, and generally I liked this one. I think I definitely recommend the audiobook over physically reading it because the big cast of narrators and the way they've done it with the switching of POVs really does help in here. There are a lot of POVs to kind of keep up with, which I didn't struggle with too much, but there are a few places where they start referring to people by different names and you don't exactly know who is who as they get into some of the games that they're playing. So with that, I think the audiobook kind of helped me kind of not get too hung up on the who was who aspect of it. I feel like this is a book where if I had put some focus into it and actually sat and stared and thought every move through as I went, I would have guessed a lot more of the twists and turns in here, but I was purely along for the ride, mostly reading this on audio, and therefore the reveals did surprise me, and it took some twists and turns I did not expect. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it as we get toward the end and everything starts coming out. I do think it wrapped up very neatly and very conveniently, and there's a few things that get glossed over a little bit that maybe could have gone a darker route, and maybe I would have liked that a little bit extra, but it was a fun read. I really would absolutely read from this author again. I didn't necessarily love all of the characters, but I did find them interesting. I loved the different ways they've written books and how that gets incorporated into the story. And while there were a few relationship issues I feel like could have been fleshed out a little bit more to give more motivation and more understanding of where they're coming from, overall, this was a good, solid time and a 4-star read for me. So we're off to a good start. I'm enjoying myself and looking forward to my next island read. I have started and DNF'd my next island book, and that is The Life Impossible by Matt Haig. This is one I had heard really mixed reviews about, so I kind of went in a little wary, but the concept of it sounded so up my alley, I was really hopeful. This is about a woman. She's a retired teacher, and years ago, she gave a person some company when they needed it. And in the present day, she's telling the story of how she inherited a house from this woman out of the blue, knows nothing about it, but spur of the moment, she's retired, she really doesn't have any ties to her life. She hops a plane to Ibiza to explore what's going on here. While she's there, she meets a man who her former friend who has passed away knew, and he's kind of introducing her to this weird and wild concept going on in here. And it's very wild, it's very strange, it's very mind-bendy. And with that, she begins to go through a lot of things. I don't even know how to explain this. The concept of it, this kind of twisting of reality concept, maybe I would call it, is really, really interesting to me, but I find it's just taking too long. I made it halfway into this one, and every little thing gets a discussion. There's a goat in the road, and that leads to a paragraph of discussion. A dog walks by, that leads to another discussion. And it's just too much, and it's going into too much depth to hold my attention. And I think that's where the mixed reviews come in. It's got like a 3.48, I think, on Goodreads. And I can see that if you just want to sit and meander and you really like these kind of big picture but minutia type discussions, maybe this would work better for you. But for me, like, I found myself way too easy to zone out, way too easy to want to put it down and move on to something else. So I decided I'm moving on to something else. So with that, I'm just going to leave that here, I think, and I will check back in with you when I pick up my next island book. This island update is thankfully going a little bit better. I have made it probably about 60% or so into the Night Marchers, and generally I'm liking this one. I wouldn't say I'm loving it. It is a little bit slow, but it's, I think, slow burning to get wild is my guess. So The Night Marchers by J. Lincoln Fenn. This is one that I received gifted. The book begins with a series of letters written to Liddy from a woman who is in a remote location. She's doing some scientific research. These are dated beginning in April 1939. And through these letters, at the beginning of the book, we start to see her kind of mentally fall apart. We assume she seems to get ill from something, whether it's something in the local flora or fauna or what have you. And she begins to hear about the lore of the island, where there are these soldiers or people who march. And when you see these people marching and you meet their eyes, you go to join them. And it's like a spiritual or a spirit march. And she has now seen these people marching. And within this group is her husband and her daughter who died. So from here, we jump to a letter from the local pastor, reverend, priest, whatever he may be, sending these letters back to her sister and basically saying that the woman committed suicide and they've buried her, and that's where we have it. Then we jump to something that's a little more present day, and it doesn't really specify a year, but from the technology they're using, it certainly seems modern. And we're following Julia, and she's recently divorced her husband. Her husband has taken custody of their daughter by telling lies about her, and she hasn't worked in years and years, doesn't have a job. She's had a prenup with her husband. So basically she's left with nothing and is desperate. Her aunt Liddy, who is of the same name as the woman being written the letters at the opening, contacts her with a proposition. Liddy has money and no heir. And if she can get Julia to help her out with something, this will give Julia a much better position to get custody of her daughter back. But what Liddy wants is for Julia to go to this remote island where her sister died and find a sample of a flower that was kind of blamed for things, using the excuse that they're going to bring her sister's body home. They are going to find some answers, some scientific information about this island. It's a very weird island. When Julia shows up, they're not allowed any technology with them. They are not allowed to talk to the islanders, who are all women except for this priest. It's a very closed place. Like, they search all the luggage as soon as they arrive, and you just kind of know there's something not right happening here, and you're not entirely sure what the reasoning really is. What's the danger? Is it the people? Is it the place? Is it something else? There's also these passages that we start getting early on. They don't happen too often, but even just right before chapter 1, we have this kind of discussion about something that's happening, something weird that's that's happening, something that is causing someone to get paid $400,000 to do extra steps. And we don't know exactly how that ties in at the beginning. And even at the halfway point, still not entirely positive what we're going to get in here. So like I said, it's feeling a little bit slow, but I am definitely intrigued. I went to bed last night. I was maybe 30% of the way into it. And this morning I've just been binging it again, went way past the halfway point where I meant to stop. So I think this will be an easy finish today. And I'm happy to have this one going better than my last book. So with that, I will check back in with you later. I have now finished up The Night Marchers, and I liked this. I didn't love it. I found it rather slow. I was hoping that maybe in the second half it would pick up the pace just a little bit, and it did a little bit. We get more answers, more intrigue, more information about what's going on in here. It took some directions that I did not expect, and I was along for the ride. Like, it definitely had my attention. I didn't want to put it down, but it also could have been maybe tightened up pace-wise a bit better for me. I think the concepts in here and the way kind of the atmosphere of the island is done is really well done. So I liked the writing. I liked all of that. It was purely a pacing issue that kind of dragged this down a little bit for me, but I'm still giving it a 3.5. The main character makes some decisions I don't necessarily jive with. She puts herself at risk. She makes some bad calls, but without that, would we have a plot? Probably not. I don't know how I feel about the ending in this one either. Obviously, I can't say anything too detailed about that, but there are definitely some points of discussion in here. This would be a really interesting one to do with like a book club discussion, because there are elements of kind of cultural issues, history issues, questions as to what really happened, what didn't happen. And there are some lingering questions in my mind, which I don't necessarily mind. It keeps me thinking about a book longer, which is always interesting to kind of keep thinking through what happened. But in the end, this one's getting a 3.5, I think, for me. A good time, definitely a step up from my last Island book, but I'm hopeful to continue the upwards trajectory and maybe even enjoy the next one more. I'm ready to check in with you again on my Island reading because I am just past the halfway point. I think I was at 54% in Close Your Eyes and Count to 10 by Lisa Unger. And this is an author I've absolutely loved thrillers from in the past, and there have been some that have been disappointments. So when I saw she had a new one or relatively new one out, I definitely was interested. I haven't seen anyone, I don't think, review this yet. So I am coming into it with a little bit of hesitation, and at the halfway point, I'm still reserving some judgment. The premise of this one definitely had me intrigued. We've got a single mom, and her husband was accused of some financial crimes. It made her family the target of a lot of hate and abuse and just general animosity. She is struggling to make ends meet. Like, her son breaks his glasses and he's out of glasses. He has to wear an old prescription because they just can't handle any extra expenses. Her son points out that there is going to be this competition and the winner gets $1 million, and this gets her attention. And it also kind of stirs up a little bit of excitement in her as well, aside from just the idea of having enough money to live on and get her kids to college and all of that. The competition is interesting. So we're also following Maverick, and he's the one putting on this competition. This is something that he does. He arranges these big, huge events. They make a lot of money on them. They bribe local people to allow them to use different things. And in this case, it's going to be an over-the-top hide-and-seek competition in an abandoned and potentially haunted hotel on this island. So we've got isolated setting, we've got potential creepiness, and we've got these influencers, because Adele is a fitness influencer, not exactly a big one, but she is an influencer, and that's kind of who's competing in this competition, are different influencers. So we've had a lot of setup so far. We've got multiple POVs between Adele and then some of the people on Maverick's side. We've got some mixed media. There was a competitor in one of Maverick's previous kind of games who went missing, and there are a lot of accusations against him for that. And we're getting some mixed media elements, podcast elements tied to that disappearance, and people investigating it and finding out what happened there. So there's a lot going on in here. I struggled a little bit with the switching of POVs. I think the rest of the book I'm going to sit down, and I've got it on my Kindle in addition to the audio, and maybe doing a little bit of tandem reading that way will help me to follow a little bit, because I think this has the potential to be a win. I'm just not 100% hooked yet. And I think some of that is that I was getting a little lost here or there, but I think the setup was good. Getting to meet our cast of characters. From the synopsis, we know right off the bat that this is not going to go smoothly. And obviously it wouldn't be a book if it did, but we have the kind of storm element with them being on this isolated setting. And then there's basically a shift from hide and seek to outright survival mode. And I am really hoping that this is going to be a good binge read. I am exhausted for some reason. I don't know that I mentioned it, but 2 nights ago, our power went out in the middle of the night, and that means everything turned back on at once at 4 a.m. Absolutely jolted me out of my sleep. Did not sleep well the rest of the night, and I've just been kind of off kilter since then. So I'm hoping I can get in some more good reading tonight and finish this one up. If not tonight, then definitely by tomorrow night. That is the goal currently. But this one gives me hope that I'm going to enjoy it, and it's going to fall on the positive end of books from Lisa Unger for me, and I will provide you with an update once I finished it. I'm back with final thoughts on Close Your Eyes and Count to 10. It was indeed a pretty easy finish, so that was a positive, I guess, but it just never came together for me. I felt like the whole game concept, this hide and seek, this creepy location, really never was fully utilized. It was a lot of setup to get to it, and then the storm and the island, like on a very practical level, takes over, and the dangers that come into things have very much a human nature to them. So I felt like this is another case where the synopsis kind of sold a different book than the book I wound up reading, because the game could have been really anything and our characters still would have gone through the same stuff. I think the island setting was interesting. There were a few moments where the setting did impact the story, but ultimately I think there was just too much going on in here. We had the people creating these games and everything they're up to and their history and whether or not they're making good choices, often not. And we had the contestants and them being influencers. We were following the children of Adele, their teenagers, and what's going on with them back home. We have Adele's situation with her husband, who has been accused of these crimes, and that story, and there's an agent who's following and looking for him. And there's just so many moving pieces in here that I think me saying that it was just because I was doing audio only at the beginning was causing me kind of not to follow the switches and POV and stuff. I think that was wrong. I think it was just that there were too many pieces going into this. And later in the book, we got less of the kind of podcasty elements. We still get the social media stuff, and I think that was really interesting, the way social media kind of eggs on Maverick and his friends and this type of project that they're doing, and also that they're getting some troll comments in there. I think that kind of felt very natural and was an interesting inclusion. But ultimately, this winds up being like a 2.5, maybe a 3 at a stretch. For me, I'm probably rounding it to 3, but it just didn't hit. It was an easy listen, but not one that I felt like I couldn't put down, but also one that I wasn't feeling the need to put down. I don't know. It just was kind of okay and not great. So unfortunately, my Ireland experience here wasn't the absolute best. I really left this book feeling like there were things I wanted answered better, things I wanted fleshed out more, but at the same time, things that needed to be cut because there just were too many things to actually flesh everything out. So with that, we're moving on, hopefully to more success. We shall see. I have picked up my final Island book. I am a little over 100 pages into On a Clear Day You Can See Block Island by Gage Greenwood. And this is, of course, a Twist of Retreat edition. So a lot of pretty features to it. This actually wound up being quite different than I expected going into it. I interpreted the back talking about the 4 siblings who had a traumatic experience on Block Island as being they've now grown up. And no, they are still kids. So this, I guess, could be considered YA, probably, maybe, question mark. So the synopsis doesn't really say it, but it happens within the first chapter. So the traumatic experience, I don't feel like is a spoiler. What happens is this family is on Block Island. They are playing a silly game. It's a dad and 4 siblings. And then they start hearing noises coming from Wreath's room. And she's a teenage girl. They don't know what's going on. Dad finally breaks down the door and they see a monster eating her. And yes, indeed, this is traumatic. We then jump forward 4 years. The dad is a hopeless alcoholic. We have Charlie, who is a teenager. He's the oldest of the remaining siblings. And then we have Chrissy, who was very young when this all happened, and Angela, who was so young, she doesn't even really remember her sister. Charlie's an anxious ball of anxiety. Chrissy is horror obsessed, and I can definitely relate with that part of it. And Angela is seeing things and and really anxious in and of herself, but people don't tend to take her as seriously because she didn't actually really see anything or remember seeing anything. So these siblings are trying to figure out what happened to their sister and returning to Block Island. There's signs that maybe there is actually a monster on the island. People have long believed that they all hallucinated this or made it up or whatever. Having a good time with it. It's got me hooked. There's a lot of trigger warnings in here for drug abuse, alcohol abuse, mental health, potentially suicide, I think, and mentions of dead relatives and dead children, and a lot going on in here. So I would recommend going in here with caution, but it has quickly hooked me once I kind of settled into realizing this is a lot different than what I expected going into it. And I'm definitely hooked to see where this is going to go, what direction. I think there's going to be some heavy stakes for our characters, but we have Charlie making new friends. We have the girls kind of starting to branch out a little bit, and is returning to the island going to make things better or worse? We shall see. But I'm hoping maybe I can finish it up tonight. This one is on KU, so I've been using my Kindle, but there's no audio, so it's about how long I can keep my eyes open tonight. So I'll check back in maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. Time will tell. I'm back to do a quick little wrap up on this island vlog because I did indeed finish up On a Clear Day You Can See Block Island, and I wound up with mixed feelings about this one. I did wind up finishing it last night, which means it was a quick read, though to be honest I was fighting to get through the last couple of pages because my eyes kept closing. It definitely took me the most time possible to get through it last night to be able to say I finished it yesterday. But I think this had a lot of really cool elements. The kind of lore behind it, the reveals of what's going on were interesting. I didn't feel like our characters got a lot of depth to them, and there are some things that I just feel like they didn't serve a purpose to the plot. Without getting into spoilers, what happens to the older brother, that whole sequence I could have done without. Like, it didn't need to be there. I think it was interesting seeing the way the trauma impacted each of the siblings differently, but the dialogue in here just felt a little awkward at times. I didn't necessarily have a clear picture of how the age differences between the siblings were, and I think it just could have used a little more development. There are plenty of 4 and 5 star reviews of this one. For me, it's at the low end of a 3 star because I did find it entertaining. I found it easy to read, and I had a decent time with it. I just don't think it's the best written thing I've read. So overall, this was an okay read to finish us off here. I feel like this vlog, I didn't find any huge wins, so hopefully my own island adventure will be the really big win of the summer for me. Let me know in the comments below, do you have any island setting recommendations for me? Have you read any of these books? Let me know all the things. And if you've made it this far and you don't have anything to comment, leave me an island related emoji to let me know you were here. If you could hit that like button below, I would surely appreciate it, and subscribe if you're interested in more of my themed reading vlogs, more of my book reviews, and more of my bookish content in general. But for now, I'll leave you here and see you real soon in a new video.